Well, after months of roadblocks, there could finally be a glimmer of hope on the Gaza Strip. Reports that Israel and Hamas have made significant progress and could be nearing the final phase of negotiating a ceasefire. And once established, a three-phase plan would go into effect. So the first 45 days would release civilians and female soldiers in the custody of Hamas, and the IDF would retreat from specific areas of Gaza, including city centers and the Gaza-Egypt border. The 62 hostages assumed to still be alive would then be released in phase two. The ceasefire could end a war that has decimated Gaza for over a year since Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th of last year. More than 45,000 have died, more than 100,000 have been injured, and more than 90% of the people of Gaza have been displaced. So let's bring in retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, a senior fellow at Defense Priorities and host of Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube. Lieutenant Colonel, great to see you as always. So here we are again, possible ceasefire. There are these conflicting reports on where Benjamin Netanyahu is right now and whether we are really on the cusp of a ceasefire. What do you know? Do you think a deal could actually come in the next few days?
This time, I am optimistic. When we've talked about this, and when it's been brought up several times before, I had full expectation it wouldn't happen, and it didn't happen because there was so many political signals that one or both sides weren't really interested in having it for various reasons. This time, it's very different, I think, because you've had the successful ceasefire with Hezbollah in southern part of Lebanon. You've had the dismantlement of Syria, of course, and look, everybody is tired from this war. There's benefit to both sides, Israel and Hamas. Hamas has been devastated. Now they've lost a lot of their capacity to even get any kind of supplies or anything else from anywhere. And so I think that this is like required of them. So they're giving in on some things about where how far the Israeli soldiers would have to withdraw, when they would withdraw. They didn't have that earlier. And the Israeli side is also giving in a little bit there, which signals that both sides probably are finally where they need to be. And so I'm a huge fan of this. Anything that's going to stop the killing and give people a chance to breathe and then have a negotiation to end this is a great thing. I would only caution, though, that there's a long way to go to resolution, and still, the vast majority of the Gaza Strip has been destroyed, and there are big issues down in the medium and long term to try to bring peace to this situation.
Yeah, and I do want to talk more about that. But what do you think was key here? I mean, is it this ceasefire with Hezbollah? Is it just the fact of just being tired, fatigued from all of the fighting?
All of the above. All of those things are playing a significant role. That's why I say the overall conditions are very different. And you got to understand that prior to October 7th, 2023, Israel, the longest they had ever had an active combat had been a month. So all of their wars, the 1967, the 1973, the 2006 Lebanon War, et cetera, they've all been short, sharp conflicts. This thing has dragged out, 14 months and going, and it has devastated large sections of the Israeli economy, is wearing out their troops, and they need this ceasefire as much as anybody. And then obviously on the Palestinian side, on the Hamas side, they have just been absolutely decimated, and they've seen all of their patrons be knocked out one after the other. And I think that they realized that, it's an existential issue for them. And I think all of those things combined have brought us to this point.
So if a deal is made, do you have confidence it will last based on everything we've seen, for the past more than a year?
It'll last as long as both parties want it to last. And I would guess, based on history, how these things have gone in the past with multiple of these parties, it can last for a while. The problem is, though, that if you don't, in the aftermath of a ceasefire, if you don't address the core causes of this, and that goes even back to October 7th and all of the issues with the Palestinian people and the legitimate security interests of Israel, if all those things aren't taken care of, then it'll just be kicking the can down the road, and we'll be waiting until the next explosion arrives. And that's the really hard part.
And you mentioned, there are so many problems, the problems at the core of this also have to be addressed. But what happens after a ceasefire? How does some of this rebuilding begin when there is so much devastation?
Well, the first thing is just people are just going to breathe and just finally be grateful that the bombs are stopping, and they're going to just relax, honestly, and then slowly then they'll get into the more diplomatic, political issues of trying to find a solution, et cetera. But part of the negotiated process for the ceasefire is an immediate increase in humanitarian assistance for the Gazan people, and so that will be first and foremost, because then the entire international community, as well as Israel, is going to have to figure out how are they going to sustain all of these people, because everything that they had that was enabling them to independently sustain themselves has now been wiped out. So everything has to be rebuilt, and who's going to pay for that? What is the time frame? You know, what are the people going to do in between then? There's a lot of difficult road ahead, but you know, again, you got to start with stopping the killing so that all that can begin.
And I want to switch to another major war, what's happening in Ukraine. Ukraine is saying now that it has killed this senior Russian general in Moscow. Happened during a scooter bombing. Russian authorities say this is an act of terror. How significant is this death, this killing, and what could it mean going forward?
Well, I mean, it meets the definition of anyone's definition of terror. They went into Moscow, so it was a big deal because it shows that you know, Russia was not able to stop a terrorist attack just miles from the Kremlin, and this was a pretty high-ranking general as well. And look, Russia has never been one to shy back from hitting back when they've been hit, and whether it's missile strikes or long-range missiles from the U.S., et cetera. Every time Russia says they're going to respond, they do. And one thing Putin has always said is he has a tit for tat or a mirror image, whatever. If you hit us one place, we're going to hit you. So I think that the chances are pretty high that Russia will retaliate, and probably against a high-profile target in Kiev if they do what they've done in the past. And honestly, none of this has anything to do with reaching a negotiated settlement, because that's really baked in already. So this just seems to be something that could cause an explosion here, but it's not going to provide any positive outcome for this war.
All right, we'll see what happens over there. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, thank you.
Thank you.